Hey, Run Try Bike community. Welcome to the live recording of the 146th episode of the Fireside Chat on the Everyday Athlete Podcast Network, brought to you by Run Try Bike. My name is Jason Bahamundi, and I'm being joined by Gandhi for today's episode, where we are going to be chatting with Joanne Bullard of Absolute Fitness Performance. You may have heard that name before, come from our platforms. You may have read her work on our website as well as in our digital magazine. And doing a little research on our own platforms, realized that she was a guest on our Fireside Chat on episode 37. So 109 episodes ago. So almost exactly 2 years ago, which is amazing. But before we bring Joanne onto the show, please do us a favor and subscribe, rate, and review our network on your favorite podcast platform. And without any more babbling from me, let's bring Joanne onto the show.
Hi, everyone.
Hey, Joanne, how are you?
Good. How are you doing? Thank you for having me.
I am awesome. Thank you for joining us. I got to tell you, one of my favorite things about running this business is getting to read your articles before the public sees them, because then I get to read them when the public sees them, and it reinforces everything like 2 or 3 times for me.
That's awesome. Thank you. I enjoy writing articles for all of you. It helps me kind of check myself sometimes and remind myself about all the important tips and topics and all that.
Yeah, and for those of you who may not know, Joanne is the owner of Absolute Fitness Performance, which helps athletes from high school all the way through adulthood, and now a provider for the Olympic and Paralympic teams in the U.S. With mental skill strategies, which we can all use as we make our way through the sports. And while we were in the green room, Joanne, I asked you about, what the weather is like in New Jersey. And you told us like a week ago was about 9 degrees. And I want to jump right into this because the mental prep for upcoming racing season during the inclement weather in the northern part of this country, it's got to be tough. Like, look, we live in LA. When we're done with this interview, I'm going to get on the treadmill because it's going to be 50 degrees. But that's not a big deal. I can run outside, right? Do you have any tips or thoughts that can help some of the athletes who, may refer to it as the treadmill or are not excited about getting on their stationary bike or the bike trainer during, the next month or so that can help them, because their race season is going to be in the spring and it might be, 60, 70 degrees when it's race day?
That's Doom Machine, by the way. The English Doom Machine.
Sure, absolutely. And you definitely hit a very important point. It's freezing in a lot of areas, although it is warming up. I think we're in the 30s, low 40s in New Jersey right now compared to last week. But, when you think about conditions outside, there's a part where sometimes endurance athletes are like, I'm going to push through this. Like, I can do this. I'm tough. I'm mentally strong. This is going to test my resilience and all that wonderful things. We've all been there. But then there's also the smart side of the brain that may say, is this safe? Like, are these conditions worth it to push through? And, we need to think about certain elements like, is it icy out? How cold is it actually? Some of us can handle more like colder temperatures than others, but is it safe? Is it going to put us at risk for injury? So on and so forth. And that can then lead us into taking our workout indoors, which for a lot of us may not be as fun. And it may be that treadmill, as you're referring to, Jason. So some tips and strategies that I would suggest would be, first of all, to take it day by day. Just because it's cold one day and you have to move your workout indoor doesn't mean that there goes the whole training season or the whole next 2 weeks. But instead, using it as an opportunity to maybe challenge yourself, viewing the treadmill as like, all right, I don't find this super fun, but can I challenge myself to get through this workout on the treadmill? Maybe set up a little reward for yourself at the end to help you stay motivated through that session. Another piece would be to really, it's a good time to recognize the elements of control and also realizing that a couple workouts, even if it is 2 weeks, like we've been experiencing in New Jersey where it's been very cold, again, probably won't throw your entire training plan off. It's going to require you to adjust. So that's when we think about the process, like here we are, and there's our goal of what we want to be achieving. And the process is going to be up and down and up and down and up and down. It's messy in the process. It's not always perfect and beautiful and everything's 100% on point, but that's where sometimes when we have those off weeks that we need to kind of respect it. Respect the fact that there's going to be a little shift, a little change. Analyze what we have control over, what we don't have control over, and then work to re-strategize.
Yeah, and I appreciate that you use the word respected, the terms respected, because I know for a lot of athletes, Jason, I can't speak for you. Maybe I'm sure you've experienced this as well. I've definitely experienced this, but like just like making those comparisons and like seeing those tough weeks and just like struggling through them and then knocking yourself down over a bad workout or like a couple bad sessions in a row and not being able to like zoom out and see that big picture. Do you have any exercises or any tips that or procedures that you follow for like um, zooming out and seeing that big picture? Like when do you put yourself in the big picture and when do you put yourself back down to the day to day?
That's another good question. So yeah, strategy wise, what I would say is this is a good time to come back to your goals. What do you want to be accomplishing? I like to refer to goal setting as like a rock wall. Like if you've ever done rock wall climbing, where you kind of have to respect each rock along the way as you climb up that wall. And each rock, when you think about the placement of your fingers, where your toes go, like every rock serves a purpose. And until we approach that rock, we may not know what the purpose actually is or what lesson we're going to learn. But when we kind of zoom back out and get through that week and look backwards and reflect, many times those weeks are the weeks that when we look backwards, we're like, man, that was challenging. I got through it and I learned this about myself, or hey, I really enjoyed going on that bike. I'm going to start adding that in once a week. Or, we find out something different about ourselves. And that helps us when we think about the growth. Because if it's not weather that gets in our way, it could be other things that we encounter. It could be family life, it could be an injury, it could be not feeling well, work, and we're going to have to be able to ebb and flow with it instead of just throwing in the towel every time a challenge does, come forward.
I chuckled at the idea of work because I'm literally right after we get off the show running to the treadmill so that I can get a workout in before I go back to work because I've got some things I need to get wrapped up. And I just think it's a matter of, and this is leading to a question. The rock wall example, the challenging and I got through it example that you just gave us is really about perspective, is it not? Right? The idea of being able to have perspective and putting the sports that we participate in, because the vast majority of our community are not getting paid for this stuff. And it's about putting it into perspective and not twisting yourself in knots just to, you know, slap a workout on the Strava so you can get kudos, right? Like if it's not going to benefit you in the moment, sit on the couch and relax. Like, can you help us understand how we can be better at putting things in perspective when it comes to either a bad workout or a missed workout, whether that's due to weather or to the word you used earlier, work?
Sure. Perspective is totally unique, right? So each one of us, even if you have a training buddy that's training for the same race that you do your training sessions with, you're going to have different views. You're going to view your sessions, you're going to view your training differently. And that's what makes you who you are. But like you said, we're probably all doing this for ourselves, right? There's something that we enjoy about it, something we find fulfilling. There's some level of passion we have connected to this. And that's why we keep showing up. So I always come back to when I'm working with athletes that maybe are struggling with this or need some strategy, what's the reason you started? What's your why? What's your purpose? And does what you are, that did not make sense. I messed up there. Is what you are doing serving that purpose? If it's not serving that purpose, it's okay to give yourself permission to say no, or to say, you know what? I don't have access to a treadmill right now. Um, it is 9 degrees outside. I'm going to give myself an active rest day and not feel guilty about it, right? So that permission to see things in a different view when we think about perspective can be hard, because a lot of times, especially in the endurance athlete population, very high achieving people, right? Very high levels of achievement motivation. So we want to keep going. We want to keep pushing. No's not an answer, but we're also a person. We're a human. We have to think about the holistic well-being of ourselves. So really, when we think about the perspective, it's what serves you and does it connect into your journey? And you're the only one who's driving that bus. No one else is.
Before you jump in, I want to follow that up because you had written for us a while back about your why. And then I think you and I talked about it at one point in that episode 37 about how the why changes or can change. And that conversation had a big impact on me over the last 2 years because our whys can change, right? And one of the things that I talk to a lot of people about is it's okay if your why changes, right? If you got into this because you wanted to get fitter or faster, or you're on a sobriety journey and 6 months into it, your why is something new. That's okay. How can we help athletes whose why are changing, as they're going through this process? Is it just a matter of perspective or acceptance on, yeah. And I know you are, for sure, going through a change of why. So how can we help athletes when they realize that their why for, let's say, how they got into the sport and 2 years later are different? How do we help them?
That's another awesome question. So again, it's going to be unique for every athlete. Their journey is going to be different, but yeah, we do change. I mean, we're evolving, and that's sometimes hard. That's sometimes hard to accept, like the pre and the post, like who I was when I started and then where I am now. And even though that journey may have been beautiful and you made so much growth, it's like, oh, but I used to do these style races. Why am I not doing that now? Oh, I must not be as fit. I must not be as tough. No, maybe something has altered, maybe something has shifted within your personal life. So I think it comes back to what I said before, giving yourself permission that you are allowed to change your why. Nothing is set in stone. A huge piece that I use when working with athletes is spending time. I don't really do New Year's resolutions. That's nothing I really connect with, but I do connect with self-reflection and what are intentions that you have. And that's something I like to share with athletes, because whether you do it in January or in June or in April, just giving yourself that moment to pause and just thinking about, where am I right now? What are the goals? Like, what's the action plan I want to set up for myself for this year or this season? And sometimes when you don't have maybe the goals that you used to have, you may start searching and be like, well, I always run a fall marathon. I should go find one. Right. And then you may sign up for that fall marathon, and all of a sudden you're not as engaged in training, or life gets in the way and work, like we said before. And now you have a very different view of that fall marathon than you used to have. And then you start questioning yourself. Right. But instead, thinking about, nothing is permanent, right? Everything is temporary. And this is all for you, right? This is all for you and what you want to get out of your experience as an athlete. So, absolutely, you can reshift those whys, and giving yourself that space to do so. You don't need to really get permission from anybody else. It's just a conversation of you with you. And other people might question, oh, I thought you always do. And it could be like, hey, just shifting gears right now. And you could actually be inspiring You're pointing no. You may actually be inspiring somebody else who's been on the fence or been struggling with that too, because that comes into our athletic identity also.
So the reason Jason's pointing at me is because I spent a better part of last year and the last couple of years diving into the world of 200 milers and doing races above 100. And then I did a quick pivot after my last race of the year. And I was like, I'm going to do speed work. I'm going to focus on shorter distances. And then I'm going to work my way back to doing performance based 100-mile races as opposed to 200s. But I definitely, it's funny that you mentioned that. I thought you were going to do this, or like I've had people message me and go like, so what 200 are you doing this year? I'm like, it's zero. And just, it's amazing how you can, like, community is such an amazing thing. It's amazing how in endurance sports, like, I feel like, I'll speak for me personally and also pose a question on to you about this, Jason. But like, uh, you create like this identity gets created around you, and maybe it's not an identity that you necessarily strictly adhere to, but there's an identity that people form about who you are, and the way they project onto you is based on that identity. Like, this is a guy who does a lot of 200s, or this is a guy who does this, you know. Maybe for you in the past, Jason, this is a guy who does a lot of Ironmans, you know. And reason I'm posing this back to you, Jason, is you had a evolving why and also a shift of perspective and everything when you did your, I think between your last 100 and Canyons, you had like a 4-year separation. And I remember when you towed that line again, or you were talking about towing that line again, there was the shadow of like comparing your past self to your past self. And there was kind of the identity of like, I'm the guy who's done 8 Ironmans, 8 100 milers. And I'm wondering, like, was that something that you also contested? Is that something you contested with as well?
Yeah, and I go back to Joanne's earlier explanation about our changing whys, and how that stuff happened. Right, the reason why I wasn't running 100 milers is we started this business. I mean, there's only but 24 hours in a day. But I think the other thing that I want to talk about too is this concept of being the blank guy. Right, and here's the example I use when somebody's like, "I'm the vegan guy," and you bury yourself into this idea of being the vegan guy. So you only eat kale and carrots. And then one day you find out you've got a disease that can only be cured by eating meat, right? If you've buried yourself in this idea of being the vegan guy, and now you can only save yourself by eating meat, some people will have a hard time because they've built this persona and this aura about being this person that only eats vegan. um, which is insane if you think about it, right? I can save myself by eating a filet mignon, but I'm thinking about it because I've been the vegan guy. And I think what happens with athletes, and Joanne, I'd love your insight into this, is we do get caught up in this idea that I race only Ironman, or I only race 100 milers, or I only race X. And our identity gets attached to that. How do we as athletes, how can we leverage our community as well as ourselves to get us away from being the blank athlete, from the 100-mile athlete, from the Ironman athlete, to being just athlete? Because again, the vast majority of us aren't getting paid to do this stuff. So we should just be out there having fun with it all.
Fun needs to happen. If you're not having fun, why put yourself through it, you know? And that's easier said than done, I think, for a lot of us too. But yeah, when you think about being the blank guy or the blank athlete, that is your identity piece. And when we think about athletic identity, we all have different levels and ranges in which we identify with our sport. And for some of us, when that sport is taken away, or when we get injured, or we take some time off of it, we struggle, we feel lost. Like, who am I now? Right? Like, what am I supposed to do now? And then you get the questions, oh, when you said what 200, what this, and you're like, oh, zero. And you may feel almost that you're letting down this person that maybe you don't even know who's messaging you on social media. But in actuality, it's you kind of checking yourself. Your identity is vulnerable in that point in time. So when we do switch off, when we do go from always doing Ironman, like you said, Jason, and then switching off into something different, the expectations others have of us is one thing, but yeah, we can leverage our community to help us. And maybe it used to be that perhaps you had a group of people that you used to always train with, and you always were training for a very similar event. Maybe you all were training for Ironman, or you're all training for marathons. And maybe they're still getting together, but you're training for a shorter race. So can you still meet up with them for that social element, which is so important for endurance athletes? But maybe you join up with them and you're like, I'm only going to do half of what you guys do this time. Like, I'm going to do one lap instead of the 2 laps you're going to do for that 16 miles today, or whatever it might be. But you don't really owe anybody an explanation as to why you swapped off. And I shouldn't even have said swapped off, why you changed your path.
Right.
Right, because it's your choice, and it's whatever makes you happy. But that identity aspect is something that we see a lot, even when you think about like college athletes. They know the end of their senior year, if they play all 4 years, that is it after their last game. Some struggle big time with life after sport. Who am I now? What do I do now? How do I work out in a gym? And we as endurance athletes can face the same thing. Well, I'm not training for anything, or I'm not training to the intensity and level I used to train. So what do I do now? Right? And absolutely that can impact us.
The I was just searching on our website for the article that you had written about social media, because I think that's a big part of how this all gets incorporated, is our performance at these sports and social media, and the impact. And so if anybody's interested, if you just go to our website, runtrimag.com, and search for social media, it's an article that Joanne wrote back in September of 2021, and it's got some excellent insight into it. But I think that's another part of it too, right? Like, where we're talking about the high school senior who's gone through 4 years, or the college level senior who's gone through 4 years of participating in sport, and that's with a community of a team which is around you, as the kids say, IRL, in real life. And what I'm talking about now too is that the community that's online, and how social media can impact us. And, if I post my run and I get, 12 kudos on Strava, or comments on Instagram or TikTok videos, how that can actually have an adverse impact on our performance, and our ability to say to ourselves, I'm going to go from racing Ironman to sprints, or like I did, I went from racing Ironman to ultras, right? What do you see with the athletes that struggle with that concept of the online community and wanting to perform for them as opposed to performing for themselves?
Social media is great, but social media can also not be very healthy, right? So we need to, and I think this is a work in progress for everybody that has access to social media. It's defining what that healthy boundary is for you. And when we think about comparison, what's that phrase? Comparison is the thief of joy, right? Like, once you start comparing, get ready, right? Because then we're going to notice changes with our emotions, how we feel about ourselves, our confidence, so on and so forth. But starting first with the positives, right? If you do have, because there are some excellent groups that do have platforms through social media, and they encourage, right? They share, and you form that community, right? That's a positive. But then if we look at the drawbacks or the negatives and how it can impact an individual, a lot of times it could be people you don't even know on social media that are posting the picture of their watch after their run, or they're talking about, what they eat before, or their run route, or whatever it might be. And then all of a sudden you think, oh, I'm doing it wrong. Or, oh, I'm not as fast as them, right? Or they're training for the same race you're training in, which again, when you use hashtags and you're, tagging on platforms, it's great because you have that sense of community. But then it also, you can go into that deep dive, and then all of a sudden you're on someone's page and they got an extra run in this week, and you're like, I'm only running 3 times a week. They're running 7. What's going on? I'm doing something wrong. So it's sort of having that self-awareness as to what do I want to get out of using social media for my training, for my competing. Is it important for me to get likes? Because that's a hit. That's a
Mhm.
euphoric feel. That's dopamine. So when you get the likes, when you get the comments or whatever it may be, it feels good. So am I doing it for that? Am I doing it to encourage other people? Or am I really stuck in that comparison place where it can be really challenging. It can be really, really challenging. And a lot of the information that's posted on social media isn't even true. It isn't factual. And then all
What?
of a sudden you're right, you're doing something or following a plan, or oh well they said to do this, and then next thing you know you're injured,
You're
right?
telling me
Or
we
something
shouldn't?
else happens.
You're telling me we shouldn't believe everything we see on the internet?
Don't believe everything you see on the internet.
By the way, speaking of community, if you want to join a community that's uplifting, inspiring, and motivating, come hang out with the Run Try Bike community because that is exactly who we are. We will celebrate you whether you're doing your first 5K or you're doing your 100th Ironman. We're going to celebrate you. We're going to lift you up. We're going to high five you even when we get into those valleys because that does happen for sure.
Yeah. And speaking of community, we have some great comments we've been doing back and forth with Kyle McDermott. Uh, he, let's see what my favorite one. I mean, my favorite one there is I always say the days you can do more, do it. The days you can't do more, just do the workout. The days you have no motivation, just do the minimum. And the last part of it is the part I really like because I think, and I want to pose this onto you, Joanne, ask for your take on this, but I think a lot of people get caught up in like, how much more can I do? What's the most I can do? What's the most I can do? And my life changed when I started asking my question, what is the minimum I can do in a day? Like even for a workout, like if I missed a workout or something, like um, I think there's like this. What are your thoughts on like this zero sum, all or nothing mindset that sometimes engulfs endurance athletes? Like I didn't do the 30-minute workout today, so I shouldn't do anything. But what if you did a 5-minute band resistance band workout? You know, what if you did 1 minute mobility instead of 0 minutes of mobility? What are your thoughts on? Have you seen that in your practice working with endurance athletes where they have like that zero sum, all or nothing, as opposed to an all or something mindset?
Yeah. 100% on, 0% off, right? Like I'm either on or I'm off. Black or I'm white, like polar opposites with everything. And that mindset is something that's very innate in that individual. So they probably in other areas of their life have a very similar mindset or approach, right? Where I'm either doing it or I'm not, right? But I like how you were saying having that approach, more of that minimalistic side, right? Just doing what was the question you had? What was the minimum I could do today? Was that what you had said earlier?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. Now that's a very different approach, right? Because what you're still showing is when you think about progress, as we were talking before with like that rock wall that you're climbing, if you miss that 30-minute workout and you're the 100% on person or 0% on person, and you're like, well, I missed it, then that may all of a sudden make it that you're stuck at that same rock for a couple more workouts, because who knows how that's going to impact your view for that following workout, the next workout. You could then start to try to play catch up, or there are some athletes that will throw in the towel for the week. Like, didn't go well. What's the point? I'll start again on Monday, right? That's that all or nothing mentality. But a little bit goes a long way. So even if it wasn't necessarily what was on your, Training Peaks plan, or whatever it might be, or something got in your way and you couldn't get that 30-minute workout in, but you still did something, something is better than nothing. But you're also nurturing yourself at the same time. Like, you're nurturing yourself mentally and physically. Self-awareness wise, I would argue that that means you're very in tune with your needs, which is a good thing. Like, you are the only one who knows how hard you can actually push yourself. It doesn't
Yeah.
matter what plan comes out and says you need to be at this intensity. If you can't get to that intensity that day, you can't get to that intensity that day, right? So having your approach on would be very different than that athlete who is all or nothing. Because if they can't get to that intensity that day, they're going to respond to that workout in a very different manner than you would, when you reflect on it.
I want you to chime in on this as well, Jason. And I'm gonna shift this since we're talking perspective. Like I think that a lot of that principle, and it's true with endurance sports. I think it applies to life in so many ways. We all run business. We all run a business. Jason and I are business partners with Run Try Bike, and like I know that it's taken like a while to like I think it applies to the work that you do too. Like maybe for example, you have a goal of doing 4 or 5 follow-ups or like a couple social media posts. Um I do you see the bare minimum mindset in the work that you're doing with the business? Like I didn't get out 4 or 5 emails today, but I did get out one email today. I did do this today. And actually, now that I think about it, we do have our 5 personal asks. We have a task list of minimum things that we do every day to keep the business maintained and functioning. So I want to ask that question to you as well.
Yeah, I think with the business, right, similar to training for an endurance event, if it's a 45-minute run, like for example, I have a 45-minute run on schedule today. My body and mind is telling me I'll get 30 minutes in. That doesn't mean that tomorrow the 45-minute run becomes an hour. It's still 45 minutes tomorrow. And I think it's the same thing with the company. If we have our 5 tasks and I get through 3 of them, that doesn't mean tomorrow becomes 7. It stays at 5. And I think it goes back to perspective again, right? Like if I took 3 steps forward today to get to the goal, that's 3 steps forward. That's not 2 steps missed. Like, and I think that's a hard thing for a lot of people to process as they take their journeys, whether that's through running a business, getting their diploma at the high school or collegiate level, with the athletes that Joanne is dealing with, maybe varsity letters are things that some of the athletes that you deal with, Joanne, that may be something that's the goal. And one day, if they're in basketball, they're supposed to shoot, 50 free throws and they only shot 40 that day for whatever reason. Like the next day, they're not going back and shooting 60, right? Like it's how do we progress with those small steps? How can we reinforce that mindset either on our own or through community that we have around us, coaches, other teammates? Like how can we reinforce that mindset that one small step will eventually lead to giant gains?
Lead by example. Like I think we have to do the work individually first and then share it with our community or our business partners or our colleagues, whoever it might be that we're grouped with and around. But yeah, I mean, having 3 steps forward is a great thing, right? It's nothing negative. It's a positive.
Right.
But that fixed mindset would say, well, I was supposed to take 5 steps forward. And the growth mindset recognizes that, like I said earlier, you're going to ebb, you're going to flow. It's not always going to be, nothing is linear. Growth is not linear, right?
No,
Achieving our goals is not linear, right? So, I mean, we're going to have weeks that we're like on fire and we're hitting all those 5 steps and everything's perfect. And then the next week it could be 1, right? Or it could be 0 one day. And could be frustrating, but I feel that's where that individual, if they have that growth mindset, is going to take time to self reflect and to really sort of tune in and be like, okay, what was going on? What was going on this week or what was going on today? And sometimes life just happens, and that's all I could accomplish was this one thing on the list today. And even though you wanted all 5, okay, can you set yourself up for success then for the rest of the week without adding more into each day to accomplish those pieces? And that's really maintaining balance and equilibrium. And that's not an easy thing to do for anyone, anyone to do that, especially when a lot of us have 500 things on our plates that we are balancing already. And then we want to accomplish 5 things in each of those things, and it's sort of like, well, where do you give and where do you
Right.
take? How do you balance it out? But I think it needs to really start with individually with you going through the motions and sharing with other people sort of your philosophy and your journey with it.
Yeah, I would also direct people to our website. Again, runtrymag.com. If you search for flexible training, I wrote an article back in April of 2023 that talks about being flexible with your training. Because one of the things I have seen, I've been very fortunate that it hasn't happened to me, but people get injured when they are inflexible with their training schedule, or they're trying to double down on the missed minutes or the missed miles. I got to make it up. And the next thing you know, there's an injury or potentially burnout, which leads me to the next topic that I wanted to talk about, which is longevity. A lot of people will talk about, I want to do these things for the rest of my life, but their actions are actually not that, because they are doubling down on the mileage that they skipped out on. How should we be looking at the sports that we're talking about, endurance sports, for the long haul versus feeling like a failure if we miss a workout or we miss a goal? A goal race is to run, 3:45 at the Chicago Marathon, and we run 3:47. Like, how does the concept of longevity play into that, and how do we tie that all together so that the next year we can go run that 3:45 or maybe faster?
That's a great question. It's hard because, when you think about outcome and coming back to goal setting again, having that goal time for a race, right? If you hit it, awesome. But if you don't hit it, well, now I'm a failure, right? And some people will have that mindset. Others will be like, who cares? I still did awesome. I finished the race. I'm so proud of myself. So that's that individual piece. But getting into why, like, why was that the time you selected that you wanted for that marathon? What was the importance of, I think you said what, 3:45?
Yeah, I
What
made up
was
a
the
number.
importance of 3:45? And if I get 3:47, what does that mean? What's the real difference of that 2 minutes? And some athletes will be able to answer that point blank and say, well, here is the difference of those 2 minutes. And others will be like, I don't really know. So for the longevity, for the long haul, again, it's what you want to be accomplishing as a endurance athlete. And I think a lot of times the plan for longevity isn't always set in stone, right? We may have these awesome intentions when we start, or when we're feeling good, or when, everything is perfect. And then we may fluctuate. Our whys may change, as we said earlier, and we pivot a little bit. And pivoting doesn't mean that you're giving up. Pivoting means you're just changing direction, right? It's like on Google Maps, it never says like, you messed up, stop driving. It just says like, recalculating, sending you a different way. So it's kind of what we're doing too. So for that longevity piece, it's remembering that, sure, you may have these big outcome goals or ideas of what you want to achieve, but they're out there. If you're
Yeah.
only focused on the outcome, man, do you miss a lot. Like, do you miss a lot of that process and what you've accomplished? And I always tell endurance athletes, especially a lot of Ironmen that I've worked with, is, where were you on day one? What was
Yes.
day one like for you? Right?
Yes.
Because I know when I started running marathons, to run like 3 miles, I was like, oh my God, am I going to be able to do 26.2? But where were you on day one?
That's right.
Like, what were some of your awesome things that you achieved, and what were some of the things that stunk? And then you were like, I don't even want to think back to that day. It doesn't exist, right? But where did you grow from that? And that's a hard mindset to have, especially when you're in the moment.
Yeah.
Like when you're in the moment at that marathon where you got the 3:47 instead of 3:45, and it's really affecting you, you're emotional, right? You're very subjective with everything. So that really, and a lot of times you make big ultimatums,
Right.
right? Like, I'm never doing that again, or I'm
Yep.
signing up for the next hardest thing in the world, right? To prove myself. But that's where it's like, let yourself feel the emotions. It's all valid. You're a person, right? You're human.
Yep.
You're allowed to feel. But then when everything starts to decompress, and you don't have as strong of an emotional reaction, because many times it's because we're more vulnerable to something. And when vulnerability increases, shame shoots up too, and nobody really enjoys feeling shame or embarrassment alongside vulnerability. So those are hard emotions for us to feel. Um, Wait till everything kind of decompresses and then start to reevaluate. Pull out that action plan and think about, okay, what is, if 3:45 is still what I need, then what am I going to adjust? Do I need to adjust anything in this upcoming training plan for my next marathon?
Yeah, and I would direct people back to our website again, Post Race Blues. You wrote an article for us a year ago about having a post race strategy, and get past the blues. And you mentioned like missing times at marathons. We talked about this. Like I remember I was trying to qualify for Boston years ago, and I think the time for me was 3:15, and the moment the gun went off, I knew I wasn't going to qualify. Like I could just feel it in my body. I didn't have it in me. And I finished in like 3:31, and I swore off marathons altogether right then and there. I crossed that finish line. I was in so much pain. I hated it. I was in tears. And yeah, I allowed myself to have that emotion. I allowed myself to swear off marathons ever again. And I've held to that. I've just run them at the end of Ironman events at this point now, right? And so, but I think you do have to take a moment to gain that perspective and go through the process and think about where were you on day one, where are you today, and the reason why I stopped running standalone marathons more than anything else was the training wasn't fun. I didn't enjoy training for a fast marathon to get down to Boston Marathon levels, and so that's why I got away from it and into other sports. And I think that's where some of this stuff also comes into play, to take a moment to process what happened, what's happening, and give yourself an opportunity to look at something else for a moment to say, maybe there's more fun over there. How much fun did I have while I was doing this kind of stuff?
Yeah. You have to find the fun.
100%. We
Yeah.
have a comment on Instagram from a Christopher Hartzler. I hope I'm pronouncing his name correctly. He wrote, I fell away from training when a friend was hit by a car and killed during one of our training rides. I missed the training, but struggling to get past the mental aspect and finding my why again. He went for a walk last night as a first step back towards training. Curious if you have any thoughts on how he can start to make his way back into endurance sports.
Well, first, I'm very sorry for your loss. That had to be extremely hard to go through and experience. It's great that you took that first step. You're the only one who can determine what you want to be working towards right now, but you also need to recognize your need to pay attention to your overall self and what your body and mind are telling you is right for you right now. So if it is to get back right in there, awesome. If it is to start with walking again, that's great. And always remember there are professionals to help you and to navigate through these processes if you ever feel you need to speak on a deeper level, especially with mental health and well-being too.
Awesome. Do you have any other questions or anything you want to follow up on before we put Joanne through the rapid fire food question ringer?
Oh.
No, but I did. No, but I did have a. We've asked the pineapple on pizza question before. I already know what the answer is going to be for it. um, Pineapple on burgers, yay or nay?
I don't eat burgers, so nay.
That's an easy way out.
I just wanted. I think deep down inside, I just wanted a pineapple and a yay. I didn't get that. Take it away, Jason.
How about just chunky pineapple in a plastic box from the grocery store? Does that work for you, or is pineapple just all the way out?
I like pineapple.
There you go.
Yes. And shrimp, pineapple and shrimp. I've had
Oh,
that
there
before.
you go.
Okay. Yeah. Mhm.
You're in Jersey. I don't know how close to Philly you are, but if you are close to Philly, cheesesteaks are a thing. Do you have a favorite? Pat's, Geno's, somebody else down there?
Philly would be Pat's. Down by us, where I am, would be Dino's. White House. Those would be the go-tos.
I wonder how much of our audience we just lost from the Philadelphia metropolitan area. All the
Go
Geno's
Birds.
pizzas. They're like, Geno's. We're like, we're out. We'll see you later. All right. So let's dive into our rapid fire food questions. Actually, before we do that, if people want to work with you, Joanne, where can they find you? Where can they get in touch with you so that you can help them with their mental skills through these endurance sports that we love?
Yeah, absolutely. So I work with individual endurance athletes as well as teams and groups, both virtually and in person. The best way to get in touch with me, I'm pretty active on Instagram. My handle is at absolute_fitness_performance. Or you can always email me at absolutefitnessllc@gmail.com.
Awesome. We'll put that in the notes. We'll tag you there too, so when people see the video, they know where to find you. So, 9 degrees last week, 30-ish degrees this week in Jersey. What's the comfort food you want to serve yourself when you wake up and you just see that bitter frost outside the window?
Oatmeal.
Plain oatmeal, no berries, no nuts.
Well, oatmeal. Okay, I can get into it. Oatmeal with like bananas or blueberries and cinnamon, maybe a little peanut butter or protein powder, something like that. Yeah.
Maple
nice
syrup or
warm.
honey.
Honey.
Nice. So no, is soup a thing for you?
I'm not a huge soup person. I'll eat tomato if it's around, or I'll eat like escarole. I am Italian, so I will eat
There you go.
escarole or Italian wedding soup. But I don't go out of my way to eat soup. No.
Best Italian dish is?
Broccoli rabe.
Oh, so good. Oil and garlic, a little bit of salt. You don't need anything else.
Yes, 100%.
You could either saute it or grill it, and then I love putting it with an Italian sausage in a
Yes.
bun. Right?
Delicious.
It's so good. So good.
Yep.
What about
Yep.
best pasta dish?
Best pasta dish. I do like, well, I don't know if you would call this pasta dish, but I do like chicken cacciatore with like the very thin angel hair when it's together. Or eggplant parm. I would do
Eggplant
that.
parm can't be beat.
Yeah.
Especially if it's a sandwich, like the
Yeah.
eggplant parm hero. Is angel hair greater than bucatini or bucatini greater than angel hair?
I don't know. I like angel hair.
By the way, folks, I'm Puerto Rican. I'm not Italian, but I grew up in New York. This is just part of my blood. So you mentioned tomato soup, and tomato soup's partner is grilled cheese. Do you have a particular way in which you make a grilled cheese? And is there a favorite cheese that goes in the grilled cheese?
Mozzarella cheese.
Straight, keeping the Italian theme rolling.
Yes. My kids like to tell me I don't make things right or I burn things too much with the grilled cheese, but I just put like butter on both sides, cheese in the middle, and then just flip it. I'm not too fancy. Not too fancy because they'll correct me if I do something incorrect.
I'm going to help you and I'm going to help your kids right now. The best way to make a grilled cheese is you put 4 little spots of butter in the corner and then you use mayonnaise in the middle. Okay. And then when you toast that grilled cheese, that mayonnaise gets so crispy, but it provides a little bit of a tang to it so that your kids will love you forever. If they don't already.
We will have to try that.
Tiramisu or Italian wedding cake?
Tiramisu.
Is it because of the espresso?
Yes. Yes. It is.
I love it. Are you a 1-shot or a 2-shot espresso person?
2-shot espresso person.
Yeah, you have to, right? Like I think that's the rule. I think that's the law.
It's very small when it's just one.
Yeah. Neapolitan pizza or New York City style pizza?
I guess New York City style pizza. Yeah. Yeah. My
Josh-
husband's from the Bronx, so.
Yes. Where in the Bronx?
Oh gosh, I don't even know the right area. I would have to bring him in here, but he knows pizza up there. So
How did I not know that?
I don't know.
Ohm's got to tell you the story of how he ran into a pizza joint when he visited New York City.
Yeah, I was in New York City, and the place I was at doing the work I was doing there, I'd been busy for the couple of days I was there, and I was just looking for like a chance to try like New York pizza, not New York style pizza, New York pizza from New York. And so I just looked up pizza place near me, quarter of a mile, this place called Pizza Palace. I go walk down there, and oh man, pizza slices the size of your head. That day I learned that New York style and New York pizza are two different things. But Jason, I'll let you chime in on why that's important that I went to that specific pizza place and only that place.
So he sends me this text message that he's at Pizza Palace in New York. And I was like, where in New York? And he's like, in the Inwood section of Manhattan. And I'm like, you're not going to believe this, but that's the place I went to as a kid. Like, of all the places in all of New York City to go to, he walks into a place that I used to go to as a kid.
That's really
Crazy.
In my first visit to New York.
That's very cool.
You can you have to ask your husband what part of the Bronx he's from. I was raised in the Riverdale.
Riverdale.
Yeah.
Riverdale. Yeah. I'll have to connect the two of you afterwards.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
I don't know how old your husband is, but if he went to St. Margaret's up there, we might have been classmates.
Oh, that's funny. That's funny.
What a small world.
Very small.
All right. Best way to eat a cannoli, the best cannoli flavor, I should say, is
the plain ones with chocolate chips on them.
Yeah. No pistachio though? No crushed pistachio?
No, just plain.
No chocolate covered shell or half dip shell?
I just like the traditional ones. Yeah. Yeah.
Which is better, the rainbow or the sprinkles?
Well, the sprinkle cookies I like better. Yeah.
I'm going to have to travel up there, and we're going to have to go to Little Italy together one day and hang out.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is red velvet cake a real flavor, or is it just chocolate cake dressed up to go to the prom?
I think it's the frosting that gives it the flavor, like that makes it different. So I guess I've never thought of it that way, but maybe it's just chocolate flavor dressed up to go to the prom. I don't know. I've never given it much thought to that.
The responses to this question kill me every single time. Just like the little laugh of like, oh, I never thought of it that way.
Yeah. Huh. It's the cream cheese frosting, I think, that makes it taste different, right?
Yes, it absolutely is. But when people ever say that to me, I'm like, just go eat carrot cake. It's the same type of cream cheese frosting, and it's actually a better cake.
That's true.
My favorite video we have on our YouTube is we asked that question to Adam Ruska from Goes Health, and you could see the wheels turning as he's processing the question, and then he just bursts out in laughter, and he's got an English accent, which makes it even better. Like, anybody who's listening to this in the audience, go search our YouTube shorts for Adam Ruska and red velvet cake, and you will laugh. It's about 12 seconds, and you will laugh for the next 12 hours without a doubt. Favorite flavor of ice cream is?
I like I'm going to mess up the name, but it's it's caramel, and it has the pretzels in it, the pretzel bites in it.
It's like the Ben and Jerry's. It's like
salted caramel pretzel or something like that. Yeah. That's what I like.
Moose Tracks, I think is what it's called.
No, different. These are different. Like the chocolate covered pretzels in like caramel ice cream. There's a place down by us that has it, and it's very good.
Where's the high paid producer on our show that's supposed to be looking this up for us? Favorite candy bar is?
Kit Kat. I like Kit Kats.
Yes. So I don't know if you've heard this story. This summer I was riding my bike around here, and where I live, it does not matter where you go. Everything is up a mountain. Everything is up a mountain. And which means you get to come down a mountain. So I came down a mountain and into the gas station, and I walk in there and I buy a Kit Kat with a Coke, and the gas station attendee is like, why is it that all you cyclists are always buying candy when you come in here? You know, it's a gas station on a route that a lot of people ride. And I was like, it kind of just gives us energy and it helps us get through the rest of our ride or whatever. And he's like, oh, they're like boomsticks. So Kit Kat has now officially been changed to boomsticks in our world because they give us the explosion to keep going.
That's funny. It's
We
true
have
though.
It is true. We have a comment from Al Capone of all people on YouTube. And he says, I don't know how you pronounce this. So Joanne, maybe you can help me here. Conchigle. Super buena. I'm assuming he means it's really good. I don't know what that is. Do you know?
CON.
Chigle. Conchigle? I don't know.
I don't know.
We'll have to move on. Sorry.
Sounds interesting.
Now we'll have to Google that. All right. Last question for you because you've been so generous with your time. We really appreciate it.
Sure.
Tray of brownies is sitting on the kitchen table or the counter, and they've cooled down enough for you to eat them. Are you taking a corner piece, an edge piece, or the center with the ooey gooey part?
The corner piece would have to be really like crisp, or I
Yes.
would take the ooey gooey part. But I
Yeah,
like the corners better, and then I would go for the ooey gooey one.
What's going on your brownie? Are you putting ice cream, nuts, caramel sauce, anything?
No, probably just eating it. I mean, if I had ice cream, maybe I would put it on there, but I would probably just eat it if it was on the counter without thinking about it.
What kind of ice cream are you topping your brownie with?
Vanilla, maybe. Something simple. Yeah.
Do this the next time. Put the brownie in a coffee mug since you're an espresso drinker. Put some coffee ice cream inside of that instead of the vanilla ice cream. And then as the ice cream melts and you get the brownie in there, which turns into a little ooey gooey, it's like having a mocha before you know it.
Oh, that sounds good.
Yeah.
That's very good.
We got all the top tips on eating on our network here. So we're happy to help. Joanne, thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate your time. To the audience, thank you so much for being a part of our community. Absolute Fitness Performance. That's at Absolute Fitness Performance with the underscore between each of those words. Make sure you check out Joanne's posts. Great tips and tricks on mental skills to help you enjoy your sports more as you make your way from training to the start line and the finish line. Have a great day, everybody, and we'll see you next week on Fireside Chat.